You pour the coffee, you slide 2 slices of bread into the toaster, and you reach for the same things you always reach for. Maybe some deli ham, maybe a frozen sausage patty, maybe a glass of orange juice or a can of soda. Nothing about that moment feels dangerous. It feels like Tuesday. But for your kidneys, that ordinary breakfast might be one of the heaviest things they deal with all day. The reason isn't that something's wrong with you. It's about something that happens to all of us as we get older. Today we're looking at what's on a typical breakfast plate, the sodium, the phosphorus, the added sugar, and why your kidneys, after 60, handle that a little differently than they did at 30. We'll get into what the research says you can do about it, aging kidneys, and why they're a little more sensitive now. Here's something most of us never hear from a doctor, mostly because it isn't a disease, it's just biology. Your kidneys filter your blood through tiny structures, working around the clock. The rate at which they do that has a name. It's called the glomerular filtration rate, or GFR. In simple terms, that's just how fast your kidneys clean your blood. Picture an old water treatment plant on the edge of town. For decades, it ran at full output. It handled whatever came down the pipes without much strain. According to a review from the National Institutes of Health, your filtration rate stays pretty steady through your 20s and 30s. Then it starts a slow decline, roughly 8 points per decade after that. By the time you're in your 60s or 70s, that treatment plant is still running. It's just running with a smaller crew. A little less spare capacity than before. Of course, this isn't the same thing as kidney disease. Plenty of people keep healthy kidney function well into their older years, but the margin for error does get smaller. A plant running at 70% can keep up on a normal day. Send it a sudden flood of sediment, though, and there's a lot less room to absorb it. That flood, for most of us, shows up 3 times a day, and breakfast is often where it starts. Of course, every person's situation is different. If you have concerns about your kidney function, bring it up with your doctor, especially if you're managing diabetes or high blood pressure. The National Kidney Foundation points to those two as the leading causes of kidney issues. The sodium you're not tasting. Most of us think about sodium the way we think about salt, something you control with the shaker on the table. But here's the part that tends to surprise people. According to the Mayo Clinic health system, more than 70% of the sodium in a typical American diet isn't added at the table. It's already built into the food long before it reaches your kitchen. Think about sodium less like a seasoning sprinkled on top, more like packing material stuffed inside a shipped box. It's in there, holding everything together, whether you notice it or not. You only really see it once you start unpacking. Deli meats, breakfast sausage, bacon, and pre-made breakfast sandwiches tend to be some of the most heavily packed boxes on the shelf. Eat one of these most mornings, and it can quietly take up a large share of what's reasonable for an entire day. The Mayo Clinic health system notes a low-sodium approach often means keeping each meal under 600 milligrams. Excess sodium does 2 things that matter here. It pulls in extra fluid, and it raises blood pressure. Both make your heart, lungs, and kidneys work harder than they need to. Especially first thing in the morning, when your body is just waking up. The additive almost nobody's heard of, and it might be the most important piece of this whole conversation. Phosphorus additives. Phosphorus itself isn't the enemy. It's a mineral your body actually needs. It shows up naturally in things like meat, dairy, and beans. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention explains that healthy kidneys filter out whatever extra phosphorus your body doesn't need. But when kidneys are already running with less capacity, which remember is just part of getting older, that extra phosphorus has a harder time getting cleared. Over time, it can affect your bones, your blood vessels, even your heart. Here's where it gets tricky. The National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases points out something important. Phosphorus added to processed foods during manufacturing gets absorbed at a much higher rate. Much higher than the phosphorus that occurs naturally in food. Think of natural phosphorus like rain slowly soaking into soil. The added kind is more like someone leaving a garden hose running full blast onto the same patch of ground. Same water, completely different rate of flow, and the ground floods a lot faster. A 2025 study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition looked at packaged foods. It examined products from the top 25 food manufacturers in the United States. It found these phosphorus additives, things like sodium phosphate and calcium phosphate, turning up across nearly every category of packaged food and drink. And here's the part that really should surprise you. Unlike calories, sugar, or sodium, The total phosphorus from these additives doesn't have to be listed on the label at all. The National Kidney Foundation has actually sent a formal request to the Food and Drug Administration, asking for that to change. So if you've been reading labels carefully and still feel like something doesn't add up, it's not you. That information just isn't there yet. The one practical thing the National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases recommends is checking the ingredient list. Not the nutrition facts box, the ingredients. Look for anything containing the letters PHOS, phosphoric acid, disodium phosphate, monosodium phosphate. If you spot those words on a breakfast item, that's your garden hose. What's hiding in your morning drink? Let's talk about what a lot of people drink alongside that breakfast. Orange juice, sweetened coffee drinks, or soda. Research using data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey found something worth knowing. Sugar-sweetened beverages are the single largest source of added sugar in the American diet. A typical 12-ounce soda carries somewhere between 35 and 38 grams of sugar. A lot of that sugar contains fructose. And this is where some genuinely interesting research is happening right now. Several studies through the National Institutes of Health have looked at how fructose moves through the kidney itself. They've found connections to higher uric acid, which is linked to kidney stones, and to inflammation inside the kidney's filtering structures. Some researchers are even exploring whether fructose plays a role in a specific process, a process inside aging or stressed kidneys. That work is still developing. Think of it less as a settled fact, more like scientists taking the kidney apart, piece by piece, to map out exactly how this sugar moves through it. What we do know without question is that the sugar adds up fast. And for a body already managing blood pressure or blood sugar, that morning drink might be doing more than just waking you up. This isn't about never having a glass of juice again. It's more about noticing what's become a daily habit versus an occasional treat. Turns out, that's exactly the kind of small detail worth mentioning at your next checkup, especially if you're already being monitored for blood pressure or blood sugar. Putting breakfast back together, so what does all this mean for the plate in front of you tomorrow morning? The Mayo Clinic's guidance for kidney-friendly eating keeps coming back to one theme. Cooking more of your own food gives you control that a package never will. A portion of meat about the size of a deck of cards, roughly 3 ounces, gives you a reasonable amount of protein, without the sodium and phosphorus load packed into processed versions. And if you've relied on convenience breakfasts for years, here's something encouraging. The Mayo Clinic health system notes it typically takes about 6 to 8 weeks for your taste buds to adjust to less sodium. That's not a life sentence of bland food, that's about 6 to 8 weeks of a small adjustment. Then it just becomes the new normal. The bigger picture here isn't that any single breakfast is going to hurt you. It's that your kidneys, after decades of faithful service, are running with a little less room than we used to. And the things that fill that room fastest are often sitting in the same 3 or 4 spots on your plate, morning after morning, without you ever really looking at them. Looking at them is the whole first step. If you'd like more support figuring out what fits your situation, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics can help. They can connect you with a registered dietitian who specializes in kidney health. That's a resource worth knowing about, whether or not you're dealing with any kidney concerns right now. Your breakfast probably isn't destroying your kidneys, but it might be quietly asking more of them than you realized, and now you know exactly where to look. Something small to think about over your next cup of coffee or tea. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.